Fans of zombie movies are in for a treat. Today, your host brings you another Korean zombie series. Monstrous. I have to say, ever since Train to Busan was released, Korea has become increasingly fond of making zombie films. Whether it's series or movies, they just keep on coming. What's more, compared to the Americans who mostly stick to bioweapon virus infections, you could say Korea has surpassed its teachers, taking the zombie genre to a whole new level. It incorporates all sorts of horror elements. They were even the first to put zombies in an ancient setting, creating a top-rated zombie series like Kingdom. And this show I'm talking about today, Monstrous, takes things in a new direction. It actually blends Tibetan Buddhism into the zombie genre, and its director is also the director of Train to Busan, Yun Sang-ho. To avoid spoiling the viewing experience for you all, your host will, as always, cover the entire series in one go. The story grabbed my attention right from the start. In a small town called Jinyang County, an ancient Buddha head was recently unearthed. It's said to be a relic from the Goryeo dynasty, making it over 1,000 years old. For the town, this was undoubtedly a cause for celebration, but it terrified the monks from a nearby temple. Because on the very day the Buddha head was found, a bodhisattva statue on the wall eerily began to cry tears of blood. This was clearly a bad omen. The monks immediately warned that the Buddha head must not be excavated, or something terrible would happen. But the town's mayor didn't believe in superstitions, wanting to use the Buddha head to boost the town's tourism. They had it dug up that very night. When it was unearthed, the Buddha's eyes were covered by a cloth, which was covered in incomprehensible runes. The mayor didn't understand what it meant. He just thought it was ugly. So he ordered the workers to remove the cloth. Little did he know, this single act would bring a devastating disaster upon the town. The next morning, a driver, on the mayor's orders, cleaned the Buddha head. But the moment he made eye contact with the statue, he felt a strange chill run down his spine. He looked up and saw a crow cawing ceaselessly on the Buddha head. After shooing the crow away, the driver left in his truck, planning to transport the Buddha head to the town's community center. As an experienced driver, who was known for his steady driving, he suddenly became unusually aggressive. He almost crashed into a taxi. Just then, a gust of wind blew the tarp aside, and after making eye contact with the statue, the taxi driver's eyes immediately glazed over. It was as if he was possessed. Even stranger, the town, which had been perfectly sunny just moments before, was suddenly covered by a dark cloud. A woman working in her vegetable garden suddenly felt a drop of black rain on her hand. At 80 years old, she had never seen anything so strange. And not only did the black rain not stop, it grew heavier as time passed, and it continued into the night. The driver, returning after delivering the statue, stopped at a restaurant to eat. He was soaked to the bone by the black rain. He had just sat down and ordered a plate of kimchi and a bottle of soju, when his eyes suddenly started to bother him. The driver went to the restroom to wash his face. But there, he saw his long-dead father. His father, who was a gambling addict in life, immediately started asking him for money. Terrified, he ran out of the restroom. But in the blink of an eye, his father reappeared outside. But in reality, the father the driver saw was the restaurant owner. Everything he was seeing was a hallucination. The driver's eyes were now milky white, seeing his father slowly approach him, revealing a terrifying face. In a panic, the driver grabbed the soju bottle and smashed it over his head. You can tell, the driver really hated his father, but he didn't realize he was actually beating the restaurant owner. Luckily, 2 other customers intervened, saving the owner from being beaten to death. Soon, the police received a call. The female police chief, who was just heading home from work, was called back by a colleague. The sky was still pouring black rain, now mixed with egg-sized hailstones, one of which even smashed the chief's windshield. She was just complaining about the crazy weather when she saw a taxi swerving towards her. The driver was the same taxi driver who had made eye contact with the statue earlier. He was muttering to himself. His eyes also turned milky white. He floored the gas pedal, seemingly hallucinating, and reliving a past he didn't want to remember. Luckily, the chief reacted quickly, swerving to avoid a collision. However, after arriving at the station and getting out of her car, she noticed that the hailstone that broke her windshield actually had a human face on it. The chief didn't think much of it and went inside. From her officers, she learned about the truck driver attacking the restaurant owner. The chief found this hard to believe. Because the young man was known in town as an honest person, he would never resort to violence. But his current state was clearly abnormal. His behavior was extremely strange. He was calling everyone dad. He was convulsing, foaming at the mouth, and his milky white eyes terrified the chief. Just as she was about to see what was wrong, he suddenly went berserk and lunged at her. The driver, handcuffed to a chair, nearly tore off his own arm. Even the bone was exposed. The chief rushed forward to hold him down, and an officer hurried to help. They immediately called for an ambulance, planning to send the driver to the hospital for treatment. Having fallen unconscious, the driver finally calmed down. But after a preliminary check, the paramedics couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. Perhaps they would find out the cause at the hospital. The next day, two monks learned that the Buddha head had been unearthed by the mayor, and that unexplainable omens had already appeared in the town. They hurried to the city university to find an archaeologist named Ki-hoon, hoping he could help translate the runes on the cloth. It turns out they suspected this statue was the legendary Gwibble, a Buddha possessed by an evil spirit. Once it appears, disaster follows. The cloth seemed to be some kind of seal. If they could understand the meaning of the runes, they might be able to prevent the disaster. Ki-hoon recognized it as Tibetan script immediately, but he needed to do more research to understand its specific meaning. Back home, he consulted many sources, but still couldn't figure out the meaning of the Tibetan text. So, he had to bite the bullet and email all the materials to his wife, who was also an archaeologist. Sujin. The couple had been living apart, one in the city, the other in the countryside. The reason for their separation was a car accident a few months prior. An out-of-control truck had killed their daughter. Since then, neither of them had been able to recover. Sujin, who had witnessed her daughter's death, was especially heartbroken. To escape the pain, she chose to leave her husband and live alone in the countryside. And the place where Sujin lived was none other than Jinyang County, where the Gwibble was found. Compared to her husband, she specialized in the study of ancient texts. After carefully analyzing the runes, Sujin quickly deciphered their meaning. It doesn't exist if you don't see the heart. In simpler terms, as long as you don't look into the Gwibble's eyes, you won't be consumed by your inner demons. The reason the two drivers turned out this way was because they locked eyes with the Gwibble. They were cursed and made to see their inner demons, eventually losing their minds and committing a series of insane acts. Sujin immediately sent the translated information to Ki-hoon and the monks. After receiving the message, he prepared to leave immediately for Jinyang County to check on the Gwibble's current status. But he was stopped by the head monk. It turns out the mayor had already called him, saying the statue's exhibition was about to begin, and telling the monks not to cause any more trouble, to avoid any negative publicity for the exhibition. The head monk also advised him to stop the investigation. Anyone could see he had been bribed by the mayor. Since he couldn't leave the temple, the monk could only prepare for the worst. First, he needed to find out the origin of the Gwibble and see if he could find a way to deal with it. Meanwhile, because of yesterday's black rain, the crops in the fields were ruined. The villagers planned to go to the town hall together to demand an explanation. As one of the few highly educated people in the village, Sujin was dragged along by her neighbors, hoping she could help argue their case. On their way to the community center, a traffic accident was reported on the radio. A taxi driver had died instantly in a crash. Clearly, it was the same taxi driver who had been cursed by the Gwibble. The group soon arrived at their destination. As soon as Sujin got out of the car, she saw a bus nearby, with a banner promoting the Buddha head. They had actually branded the Buddha head as the town's mascot, and were using it as a gimmick to attract tourists. But at that moment, Sujin didn't know that this was the same cursed Buddha her husband had asked her to investigate. It wasn't until she entered the hall and saw the food laid out, as well as the cloth with Tibetan script that had been removed and placed in a display case, that she finally realized. But by then, it was too late, because she had already made eye contact with the Gwibble. And since the exhibition started, many people had already seen the Gwibble. To prevent more people from falling victim, Sujin had to first turn off the lights in the display case, but she soon started hallucinating. In the crowd, she saw the truck driver who had killed her daughter. Clearly, her daughter's death was Sujin's inner demon. Realizing the severity of the situation, she rushed to the restroom and called her husband, telling him everything. Upon receiving the news, Ki-hoon immediately drove towards the town. Meanwhile, in the main hall, the villagers were surrounding the mayor, demanding answers. The black rain had ruined their crops. This year's harvest was a total loss. How were they supposed to survive in the future? But the mayor told them not to worry, saying the black rain wouldn't affect the crops. Besides, now they had this Buddha head. They could vigorously develop their tourism industry, and they wouldn't have to worry about income. But as soon as he finished speaking, a villager with a sickle rushed into the hall. How dare you hit me? The villager's eyes had already mutated. He was clearly cursed by the Gwibble. But the man in the hat didn't realize the danger. He went up and urged him to calm down. But the next second, his throat was slit. The sudden turn of events terrified everyone. The entire hall descended into chaos. People scrambled to escape. In the chaos, Sujin saw the hallucination of the driver again. Without a second thought, she grabbed her neighbor and fled the hall. But when they got outside, they realized the entire town was in utter chaos. People who had looked at the Gwibble had all transformed. Like zombies, they were indiscriminately attacking everyone around them. Some even lost all hope and jumped from tall buildings. Sujin once again witnessed a speeding truck run over and kill her neighbor. She froze in terror. But the bloody slaughter didn't end there. The sound of screams was endless. The man with the sickle had gone on a rampage. He specifically targeted government officials in uniform. Even hiding in a car wasn't safe. He used his sickle to smash through the window. The official tried to fight back, but the driver next to him also transformed. Caught between the two of them, he ultimately couldn't escape his fate. Seeing the situation was dire, the mayor and his group prepared to drive away. But his female secretary suddenly transformed, picked up a pin from the ground, and stabbed her former colleague. Just as the mayor was about to be killed, a man intervened just in time to save him. The mayor quickly fled. Seeing this terrifying scene, a few young delinquents on a rooftop weren't scared at all. Instead, they were unusually excited. Because to them, the end of the world was just too much fun. Their leader, Yongju, a seasoned fighter, felt like this chaotic scene was made for him. He charged down and joined the fight, instantly killing a transformed person with a hammer. The feeling of being able to fight without going to jail was simply wonderful. But as more and more people transformed, the survivors had no choice but to retreat back to the hall. Just as they were about to close the doors, a transformed person followed them in. The unlucky mayor's leg was grabbed. No one there had any fighting skills. They couldn't even handle a single infected person. In the end, it was Yongju who came to the rescue, dragging the infected person away and quickly taking care of the problem. But the mayor was ungrateful. He immediately locked the glass doors behind him. Luckily, his follower was already inside the hall and quickly unlocked the door to let his boss in. In the past, the mayor might have been the boss here, but things were different now. Yongju, the strongest fighter, now held the power.
아이 씨발 진짜 뭘 가만히 서 있어. 문이나 막아 다 뒤지기 싫으면.
The mayor didn't dare say a word. He could only tell everyone to do as they were told. And Yongju savored the feeling of being in control of everything. After they had barricaded the main entrance, they received a text message on their phones. A disaster alert from the government. This meant the government was aware of the situation in Jinyang County. The mayor quickly used this to reassure everyone not to worry. Now, all they had to do was wait for rescue. They started discussing what was happening. Why were perfectly normal people suddenly going crazy? Longzhou stood up and told everyone that the problem was clearly with yesterday's black rain. The rain must have carried some kind of virus that infected them. That's why they were acting this way. Then, Longzhou asked everyone present if any of them had been caught in the black rain. A few honest people raised their hands, including the mayor's assistant. Seeing him still grinning, as if he were proud of it, Longzhou charged forward without a word and gave him a swift kick. Because they were all caught in the black rain, it's unknown when they might turn. So for safety reasons, Longzhou threateningly tells the mayor to tie them all up immediately. The mayor is no longer in charge here. Plus, he's also afraid these people will turn. So he has no choice but to agree. Although Xiuzhen didn't raise her hand, she clearly doesn't look right. So she is locked up with them as well. Meanwhile, the situation outside is still terrible. It can only be described as hell on earth. The news begins to extensively report on the events in Jinyang County. Just as Longzhou suspected, the government also suspects the problem lies with the black rain. But the exact cause won't be known until the analysis of the black rain is complete. To prevent the disaster from spreading, they have placed Jinyang County under a complete lockdown. Seeing this, some people start to worry if any rescue will actually come. Faced with this question, the mayor chooses to avoid answering. It seems even he isn't sure at this point. The bus driver doesn't want to just sit and wait to die. He suggests they all try to get out, using his bus to leave this place. But the thought of the bloodthirsty monsters outside makes them instantly give up the idea. Meanwhile, the roads to the town have been completely blocked by the military. No one is allowed in or out. But they don't plan on sending a rescue team into the town to carry out a rescue. Ki-hoon, who has just arrived, is stopped at the blockade. Even the police chief, returning from the hospital, can't get in. The taxi driver sees the lockdown won't be lifted anytime soon. So he has the chief get out of the car there. The chief is extremely anxious. Because his son happens to be volunteering at the community center today, he must find a way to save his son. With no other options, he runs into Ki-hoon, learning that Ki-hoon is also heading to the community center to save his wife, and that he drove there himself. The chief decides to lead him into town through a back road. Since the national highway was opened, this road has been rarely used. Only the locals know about it, so the military hasn't had time to block it. After passing through a tunnel, the two successfully enter the town. But danger immediately follows. A flock of crows suddenly appears and launches a frenzied attack on them. In the chaos, the two manage to take shelter in a nearby house. But the crows start crashing into the windows, seemingly unwilling to let them go. Seeing that at this rate, the windows will eventually break, Ki-hoon quickly grabs a bag of sugar from the kitchen. He then pours the sugar onto a table and draws a symbol. The next second, something magical happens. It's as if the two of them have become invisible. The crows that burst and don't see them. It turns out, Ki-hoon is not just an archaeologist. He also has some knowledge of supernatural events. The pattern on the table is a talisman he drew, but he can't figure out why the crows are out of control, and if it has something to do with that cursed Buddha, the Gwibble. He learns from the chief that, starting yesterday, the town has experienced all sorts of strange weather, like black rain and hail shaped like human faces. Hearing this, Ki-hoon immediately calls the monk, asking him what on earth is going on. The monk tells Ki-hoon that these are all omens caused by the Gwibble's appearance, a warning from the heavens to mankind. This means the black rain itself is actually harmless. Learning that Ki-hoon has just entered Jinyang County, The monk plans to sneak down from the mountain behind his master's back, but he's told the town is completely sealed off. Hearing this news, the monk realizes the situation is dire. Jinyang County must be in a state of chaos. However, they have already found the origin of the Gwibble and have found a way to deal with it. It turns out, the spirit possessing the Buddha statue is not an ordinary demon. It is the spirit of a vicious murderer from 1,000 years ago. To evade capture, he disguised himself as a monk and hid in a temple. He was later discovered and executed. After being beheaded, his vengeful spirit lingered on and possessed the Buddha statue. The Gwibble confuses people's minds, creates conflict, and causes them to kill each other. A great monk managed to seal it, but 1,000 years later, it was unearthed again. And with the passage of time, the Gwibble will only become more difficult to handle. The only way now is to seal it again, cover the Gwibble's eyes, and inscribe the runes. This is not a task for an ordinary person. And since the monks can't enter Jinyang County, only Ki-hoon can complete the task. To help him successfully complete the sealing, the monks will chant sutras over the phone to weaken the evil spirit's power. After hanging up, the two realize they can't afford to wait any longer. They burst out of the house. The flock of crows stirs again. The chief quickly gets into the car, while Ki-hoon, braving the crows' attack, scoops up black mud from a puddle and spreads it on the car's hood, drawing the same talisman again. With the protection of the talisman, the crows finally stop their attack. The two immediately drive towards the community center. On the way, Ki-hoon stops the car and soaks a box of paper talismans in water, preparing to use them to seal the Gwibble's eyes. At this point, Xiojin has begun to turn. Images of her daughter's death flash through her mind. The young man guarding them sees her mutated eyes and freezes in fear. In a moment of distraction, he is pushed to the ground by Xiojin, who viciously stabs his thigh with a wooden stick. Then, Xiojin enters the main hall and starts attacking the others. Just as the mayor is about to be killed, Longzhou kicks Xiojin away again. But as he grabs a chair to finish her off, he is stopped by a handsome young man. He is the chief's son, Duqian. His kind nature makes him try to stop Longzhou from killing, but he gets brutally beaten for it. Just then, the other people who were tied up also come out, begging everyone to spare them. Someone speaks up for them. Even the mayor thinks killing them directly is too cruel, but he comes up with a terrible idea, to throw them all out, leaving only the uninfected people who weren't touched by the rain. This is undoubtedly sending them to their deaths. But everyone present, except for Duqian, agrees with the mayor's plan. Just as they are about to act, Duqian stands up to stop them again. Longzhou quickly pulls him away. During their struggle, they accidentally shatter the glass in front of the Buddha statue. The statue is instantly exposed to everyone. It's over. Everyone has now seen the statue's eyes. What's worse, a mutated young woman drags over a can of gasoline and sets the building's external air conditioning unit on fire. Then, the people in the hall hear an explosion. Seeing the raging fire outside, they know they can't stay here any longer. Longzhou plans to leave the hall immediately and escape the town in the bus. The others don't want to wait here to die either. They quickly move the barriers blocking the main entrance, except for those who were tied up, and Duqian, who chose to stay. The rest line up and slowly head towards the bus. But the visibility in the thick fog outside is extremely low, making it impossible for them to see their surroundings. They can only brace themselves and feel their way forward. The infected soon spot them. After two unlucky people are taken down, the others finally see the bus. An infected person tries to grab the driver, but Longzhou yanks the infected person away and unleashes a barrage of blows on him. Under Longzhou's cover, they successfully board the bus. But just as they are about to leave, a young man who fell behind chases after them. But before he can get on, he is grabbed by an infected person that suddenly appears. But Longzhou doesn't choose to save him. Instead, he kicks him and the infected person out of the bus together. Seeing this, the driver quickly closes the door and speeds away. Everyone breathes a sigh of relief. But Longzhou notices something is wrong with the driver. Just as he is about to check, the driver turns. He starts driving the bus recklessly, swerving wildly. At that moment, Ki-hoon and the chief appear ahead, just as they are about to collide. At the critical moment, Longzhou yanks the steering wheel, avoiding a crash. But the turn driver is too strong. He instantly jerks the wheel again, causing the bus to flip over. The chief sees this and wants to get out to help, but he is stopped by Ki-hoon, because the most important thing right now is to seal the Gwibble. Meanwhile, everyone inside the bus has turned, including Longzhou and the mayor. They start killing each other. The scene is absolutely horrific. In the end, only the strongest fighter, Longzhou, emerges, but he is also heavily injured and falls unconscious. On the other side, the monks have already begun chanting through the phone. Once everything is ready, Ki-hoon drives the car straight into the hall, crashing into the Gwibble. Ki-hoon keeps his eyes tightly shut, reminding the chief not to look at the statue. But as the chief entered, he thought he saw his son. Worried for his son's safety, he can't help but turn to check. When he turns back, he sees the statue. He can't worry about that now. He has to find his son first. Ki-hoon takes out the paper talismans he prepared and begins to feel his way to stick them on the statue's eyes. Meanwhile, the chief finally finds his son, but is horrified to find he has also turned. Without a word, he starts attacking his mother. Fortunately, being a police chief, he has some skills and manages to subdue his son. But the next second, he also transforms, pulling out his gun and pointing it at his son's head. But his reason allows him to temporarily suppress the inner demon. He doesn't immediately pull the trigger. And just then, Ki-hoon finally covers the Gwibble's eyes and writes the rune, completing the seal. The mother and son instantly regain their senses. Then, Ki-hoon sees his wife, Xiojin, on the ground. At his call, Xiojin also gradually wakes up, but the fire triggers the sprinkler system. Water starts spraying all over the hall. The talismans on the Gwibble are about to lose their stickiness. Just as Ki-hoon is about to fix it, the talismans fall off. He accidentally makes eye contact with the Gwibble. The mother and son, who had just recovered, turn again and start fighting each other. They both end up crashing into a wall and are knocked unconscious. On the other side, Ki-hoon turns to see his wife has turned into a spider-like monster. But in Xiojin's eyes, her mutated husband has collapsed on the ground, unconscious. Just then, the monk's voice comes from the phone. From Xiojin, they learn that Ki-hoon's sealing has failed. Now, only Xiojin retains a sliver of consciousness. The monks have no choice but to entrust her with the task of sealing the Gwibble. They chant to suppress the demon, while telling Xiojin the steps for the sealing. Xiojin first finds a cloth to cover her own eyes. Then, feeling her way, she once again covers the Gwibble's eyes with the talismans. But just as she is about to write the rune, a now awake Ki-hoon suddenly pounces on her, pinning her down. As they struggle, one of the steel cables holding the Gwibble suddenly snaps. The car also starts to sway precariously. Seeing this, Xiojin decisively shoves her husband out of the car. The moment he jumps, the last steel cable can no longer bear the weight and breaks. The falling Gwibble takes the car down with it. The massive explosion completely destroys the Gwibble. The next second, everyone returns to their senses. The dark clouds in the sky instantly part, and the town returns to its former tranquility. It seems that with the destruction of the statue, the evil spirit possessing it also vanished. After this incident, the couple finally puts their past behind them and starts a new life. They travel the world, searching for similar paranormal events. And at the end of the story, they discover another strange corpse, seemingly a setup by the director for a sequel. And that is the entire story of Monstrous. To be precise, this isn't purely a zombie show. It's a horror film that combines zombies, religion, the supernatural, mystery, archaeology, curses, and many other elements. The zombies' behavior is somewhat similar to the Wailing. One is a viral infection that unleashes the evil deep within a person, which is a physical infection. The other makes people hallucinate and see their inner demons, which is instead a mental invasion. Besides that, the scene where the survivors head for the bus also has shades of the classic sci-fi film The Mist. However, what's praiseworthy is that the show's initial setup is very successful. The appearance of the Gwibble, the strange celestial phenomena, it's full of suspense, but the subsequent plot feels a bit weak, starting strong but ending on a low note. For a series with 6 36-minute episodes, a large portion of the middle is spent on character relationships, which makes the plot progression feel a bit dragged out. And the ending is hard to describe. The main characters try everything to seal the Gwibble, but in the end, it comes down to a physical exorcism. Simple, brutal, and effective.